How confident are you that some of that can unstick in the remaining months of this administration?
Well, first of all, nice to talk to both of you again, and it's great to see a CPI report with a 2 handle, 2.9% year over year, and of course, 0.2 for both headline and core over the month. And by the way, those are soft 2s, soft 0.2s, 0.15 on headline and 0.17 on core. So these days, everybody goes to the second decimal place, and that's a soft 0.2. In terms of shelter, yeah, it's stickier than I think we and many others would like. And the fact of the matter is that we have a housing shortage in this country that's been in the making for 10 years running. But 2 things to consider about that. One is that housing's contribution to the price index has been going down. It's been coming in. It's been contributing to the easing that I think has dominated much of this discussion today. Would we like it to come down faster and contribute more to that easing? Absolutely. And in fact, if we look at rents, we've seen them roll over in a way that many of us keep thinking would show up in the CPI. We saw more of that in June than we did in July. But directionally, it is moving in the right direction. And of course, the second point is we are taking really aggressive action to try to lower costs in the housing space. We had an important announcement on that earlier this week, and I'm happy to go through some of that. We also have a congressional agenda that we believe will add 2 million affordable units to the housing stock. That's a huge difference in terms of the affordable supply. So lots more work to do there, but we've already been rolling up our sleeves on that one.
Well, considering the good news, 4 months straight here, Mr. Chairman, a reporter asked the president today, your boss, Joe Biden, about whether the U.S. had at last beat inflation. This is what he had to say in response.
I told you we're going to have a soft landing. We're going to have a soft landing. My policies are working. Start writing that way, okay?
Start writing it that way, he said. Jared, Donald Trump just told the crowd in Asheville that if Kamala Harris was capable of beating inflation, she would just do it right now since she already works at the White House. Considering what the president just said, how do you respond to that?
Well, the forecaster in chief was out in full effect today. I think what he was really doing there was citing the baseline forecast. I mean, if you listen to experts talking about inflation today in the econ Twitterverse or in the media, you heard a lot of sentiment that was very much that the trend is pretty embedded when it comes to disinflation. Obviously, there was a pause in that progress in Q1, but it looks like it's back and back with some strength. One of the numbers I like to cite this morning is Sure, 2.9, got that 2 handle on year-over-year CPI, but it's 2.5 on a 6-month annualized basis, and it's 0.4% on a 3-month annualized basis. What those more near-term annualized rate tells you is that not only are we moving in the right direction, but we have some momentum. And when the president was talking about, a soft landing, I think, again, the baseline forecast is one for a transition to steady, stable growth, where the strong job market continues to support consumer spending. An interesting and important linchpin into that, by the way, is the fact that we now have 17 months in a row of year-over-year wages beating prices for middle-wage workers. That's a really important part of what the president was referring to.
Well, the president, the forecaster in chief, obviously, Jared, it is your job to forecast as well. As we talk about this notion of a soft landing, given after the most recent jobs report and the uptick we saw in the unemployment rate, the triggering of the so-called SOM rule, there was a lot of talk about a potential growth scare. Are you as comfortable looking at the labor market with saying that soft landing phrasing out loud as you were maybe a couple months ago?
Well, I think the thing about the labor market is to pay a lot of attention to a cooler than expected report that we saw for July, but not to over-torque or over-index on that report. If you look at payroll gains over the past 3 months, they average 170,000. Okay, that's a good clip. If you look at wage growth, July, 3.6% nominal, 3.8% nominal for middle wage workers, and we've been talking about a 2.9% inflation rate. So wages beating prices. We have, as I often say when we talk about this, we have a 70% consumer spending economy. You've got real wages growing. You've got inflation easing. You have the gas price down about 35%. According to this morning's report, 2.2% decline in gas prices over the past year. All of that supports steady, stable growth. It looks to me where we are right now. We're going to watch the cooling of the job market very carefully, but the baseline forecast is still favorable.
There's been a lot of talk about trading down in this economy, Jared, and we're going to be hearing retail sales numbers later this week. We're going to get earnings as well from Walmart. What does the president's economic advisor, in this case, Jared Bernstein, the chairman, look for and listen for on a day like that when we get a massive news dump from the retail world? What's going to be important to you, and what should our audience listen for?
Well, I think the consumer spending data, as I just mentioned, it's such a big part of the economy. Retail sales is one part of that picture, but of course it covers, a relatively small share. I think we want to look at the consumer spending writ large. We want to look at the part of retail sales that feeds into that, and of course we'll be all over that tomorrow. I'd like to talk about a different indicator right now, though, and it gets to your question, but also to Kailey's. One of the really important and I think maybe somewhat underappreciated aspects of the labor market right now is that while we've seen some cooling, it looks like that cooling has come largely from slower hiring rates, not more layoffs. Okay, think of the old bathtub model. If you think of the water in the bathtub as the stock of the unemployed, we haven't seen the flow into the tub increase. That would be people coming into unemployment very much. What we've seen is the flow out slow down some. It's taking people a bit longer to find work, and because the rate of hiring has slowed. So the thing that we don't really see in these jobs data is layoffs, or at least permanent layoffs. We had a spike in temporary layoffs in July. We're not seeing permanent layoffs. And without permanent layoffs, without that kind of increased flow into unemployment, I think it's hard to get really to a more negative place about where the economy is headed. So that's an indicator I'll be watching very carefully.